I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to AfterBuzz TV's The Last Dance episodes, where this is our after show of the final two episodes 9 and 10 specifically. We've had so much fun going over and reliving these 1990s Chicago Bulls with specific emphasis around Michael Jordan. I'm your host, Haley Graves, and joining me are our two fabulous other Jays over here. We have Mr. Jet. Say what's up to the people, Jet.
How's it going? Yeah, this is our last dance right now.
It really is, unfortunately. And we also have Miss Overtime, Jess.
What's up, everyone? I love that we're all matching today. Look at us.
I thought it was great that we all woke up this morning and coordinated our outfits. That was really nice of us.
Planned it beforehand, yeah.
Y'all should have seen our group text. It was really great. All right, guys. So we got a lot to talk about these last two, as well as just kind of giving some overall thoughts of the entire series. So let's dive into things real quick. Jet, give me your overall thoughts on these two episodes specifically.
Well, I mean, I knew everything that was going to happen, and I knew it was going to culminate in a championship and then a breakup of the team. But I also found out, as a lifelong basketball fan, I found out a lot of things that I didn't know. The Michael Jordan flu game it'd been a rumor for years that it was food poisoning, and to have him confirm it was really interesting to hear that. To sort of see his relationship with the bodyguard Gus was something I never knew, and how he kind of found a new father. Michael Jordan found a new father figure after his dad had passed away. I thought that was really interesting and moving stuff. And it was just, I mean, it was sad, but also really cool to sort of relive the team that got me super interested in basketball. Because as I said when we started this, I'm a lifelong Celtics fan, but growing up in the 90s, the Celtics were trash. So I kind of latched on to the Bulls as somebody who loved basketball, but whose team never made the playoffs until I got a little bit older. So it was really like reliving a lot of my childhood, which was really, really fun to do.
That definitely makes sense. I mean, in that same regard, like, I call myself an OG USC football fan for the exact same reasons. Jess, go ahead and give us your overall thoughts.
Yeah, I thought last night's two episodes were amazing. They were a great way to finish off. What I really liked the most about them is that they were a little slower than the previous weeks, and we were able to dive deeper into people's lives or into certain moments of MJ's life. Like, we dove deeper into Steve Kerr's life. We heard a little bit about his similarities between him and MJ. We, like you mentioned, with Gus and MJ, hearing about how close they got. That was amazing. The fact that MJ and I have something in common, and that we can both finish an entire pizza, like, it just had to throw it in there. But really, that was my favorite moment. Hearing that he finished that whole pizza, I was like, oh my God, I can relate to him on something again.
Will you be ordering pizza in Salt Lake City anytime soon?
I'm going to avoid that. Last week, I wore my pants backwards one day on accident, just like MJ wore his pants backwards.
They're exactly alike. It's crazy.
Wow. And if you want to witness it, it's on Jess's TikTok. Just going to plug her there. But
he's looking out at a pool at his house. You're looking out at a pool at yours. Oh,
there we go.
Exactly.
All right, guys. And, for me, these two episodes, I won't be a negative Nancy, but I will give a slightly unpopular opinion in that I didn't love episode 10. Episode 10 just felt slightly drawn out for me. And because they'd done so much buildup and such a good job with all the other episodes, that I didn't love episode 10. It just very much felt like a wrap-up episode for me, which makes sense. But I will say episode 9 for me was one of the best produced episodes. And I guess we can just dive into it now, because for me, it felt the most fluid. It wasn't this kind of jerkiness. Mm-hmm. We were at a point where we were just in basically 97 and 98. And I just loved the fluidity of them going back and forth from the 97 games versus the Jazz, to them talking about the flu game, to Steve Kerr, to Steve Kerr's dad. And then with him hitting that shot, that it was just beautifully done. And you could tell every move that they made in episode 9 was intentional. Mm-hmm. They brought up everything with Steve Kerr because that was something that was relatable with Jordan. And it just made it so much more impactful having Steve Kerr's story and journey in there. Jet, what was your thoughts about all of the Steve Kerr stuff? Because I mean, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know that had gone on with his dad.
No, I knew his dad was murdered, but I didn't know the circumstances at all. That he was the president of the university in Beirut, and it was like a very politically motivated killing, and that was wild. I mean, really, really just disturbing and sad for somebody who seems like such a funny, lighthearted guy to have that kind of tragedy in your life. And I think that with a lot of athletes, you see that tragedy is something that motivates them to dive deeper into their sport. And I think that's sort of what you're seeing now with this lack of sports in our life right now. While, people are dying and people are sick and it's kind of a scary time, and everybody really just wants sports back because it's a safety net. And I think for athletes, it's even more of like they can put everything aside. If they're on the court or the field or the ice, they can just feel like this is where I can control everything. This is home to me. This is where I feel the most myself. And I think Steve Kerr really threw himself even more into basketball. We saw Michael Jordan did that. He needed to get away a little bit, but I think once he finally came back to the court, he was able to really start to heal. And you've seen it countless times in sports. Brett Favre had a famous game after his dad passed away. He probably played the best game of his career on a Monday Night Football game. That was legendary. Yeah. Isaiah Thomas, former Celtic, his sister died. He went out and played the next day. He had a career high in the playoffs. So it's just like, it's their happy place for these professional athletes, and for people who love sports, watching it, I think, is their happy place. So I think there's a bigger message to that whole thing with Steve Kerr. And while it was a tragedy, I don't know that Steve Kerr would have been in the NBA if that didn't happen to him, because maybe he doesn't throw himself further into basketball. He was a fringe prospect as it was. So I'm sure he looks at it as like, it was all part of the journey to get to where he was, which was a successful NBA player and now a highly successful NBA coach.
Yeah. Jess, what were your thoughts about just the entire Steve Kerr package of episode 9?
So I think I might have a slightly different opinion. I mean, I loved the fact that they included that and learning about that, because I had no clue. I had never heard that. And I really like Steve Kerr as a person, as a coach, as a player, whatever. But I felt like ESPN kind of dragged it out more than it needed to be, meaning it seemed out of place to me. They brought up every other player earlier on in the season or in the documentary series, and then they just threw this in at the very end. It's like, well, why didn't we learn about this earlier on? Especially since Steve Kerr said that they never spoke about it. Seems like, well, yes, maybe they relate on it, but they didn't even talk about it. So it felt a little out of place to me. It seemed like they were getting ready to promote, oh, we have a Steve Kerr docuseries coming out soon or something along those lines, and I do see them posting about it on their socials as well. So I am a little curious if they are kind of like testing the waters, seeing how the audience likes Steve Kerr, something along those lines. I feel like it might happen.
See, I think for me, I just like put on my producer's hat, and I really think that their intentions with drawing out his story was to make the audience then feel something even deeper for when they showed us him making that shot. Because especially they carefully decided upon the stories in which they wanted him to tell. So they talked about his passion or his background, his parents' background in education, how his dad was kind of the one who got him into sports, who got him into basketball. Again, very parallel to Michael Jordan. So it still relates. And then I think by telling his story even deeper, then that's what made us feel something, or made me feel something for when Steve Kerr hit that shot, because that was just a big kind of ribbon, it like tied it perfectly together. As I was watching it, it just made me feel something more that I don't think I would have had the same feelings had it not been told. But not even just that part, also the fact that they talk, like we see John Paxson, talking about taking him under his wing. And I thought that was also really fascinating to hear what not only John Paxson had learned, but what he like gave down to Steve Kerr to give him the tools of how to be a good teammate with Michael Jordan. And I found that fascinating that he knew his role was going to be a role player and that his game needed to complement Michael's, never compete with it. And I just thought that that was something very powerful to kind of sit there and think about as well. You know,
what I thought was really interesting and what really stuck out to me was that when Steve Kerr's mom was talking, she looked like a little old lady, and when Michael Jordan's mom talks, she looks the same age as Michael Jordan. I guess having a lot more money is good for your health, right?
I guess so.
She looks incredible. I mean, no offense to Steve Kerr's mom, she looks like appropriate for how old she is. But Michael Jordan's mom hasn't aged since the documentary was shot. It's incredible.
For real. I was like, what is her skincare routine? You're rapid.
She hasn't aged.
Both of them lost their husbands. Like they've had
something through it. Yeah.
Yeah, they really have. And to just kind of lastly touch on the Steve Kerr thing, I got to say, guys, I absolutely adored his little speech at the end when they were talking. And he was kind of just taking all the credit for the shot, changing his story, but his little line of saying, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. It made me like him so much more as a person. You know, I've always admired who he is as a coach, but seeing him in that environment and realistically the role that he took on with the Bulls, I just loved it. And I was really happy that they showed that piece in there for us because I was like, that just made me like him even more.
I'll tell you what, though, I was nervous that MJ was going to whip out his list and add Steve Kerr to it after he said that. I was like, uh-oh.
I mean, I feel like once MJ says Steve Kerr earned his wings tonight, I feel like he could never be put on the list after that. Like he gained Michael Jordan's respect from then on out, and he can say crack jokes like that. Mm-hmm. But so now we got to talk about it, guys. We have to talk about this flu game. It was really entertaining because I haven't been able to watch them until the day after. So obviously I see everyone on Twitter talking about the Michael Jordan series and talking about The Last Dance. And I saw last night that it got revealed that this was food poisoning. And that quite honestly blew my mind because do we really believe that it was food poisoning? Jet, give me your theory because I know you have this conspiracies over here. Tell me if you really believe this food poisoning.
I buy the food poisoning thing. The other theory that was being floated out is that he was hungover or partying he was either in Vegas, if you listen to some other people, or he was at Robert Redford's chateau up in the mountains of Salt Lake City playing poker and drinking too late. I buy some conspiracies with Michael Jordan and in general, there's plenty of conspiracy theories. Knowing what we know about Michael Jordan, the competitor, I can't see him doing something that would purposely give him a disadvantage in the NBA finals. I just can't see it. I think he had his vices. We know he had his vices. I mean, God, every time he's on screen, he's either chomping on a cigar or drinking scotch, but he cared about winning more than any of that. Like if they say to Michael Jordan, okay, you can't gamble or smoke cigars or drink ever again, but you can win as many championships as you want, he would take winning. That was his biggest vice. So I can't rationalize knowing what I know about him and saying he would put himself in a position that would be detrimental to winning. So I don't buy that conspiracy theory. I don't know if it was food poisoning on purpose. That was clearly the what they were alluding to with the 5 guys showing up to deliver the pizza. It would have had to be an elaborate lie to cover up for the gambling or the drinking all night. I'll say that. But I do think it's funny that like every time you hear a story about him, he's like with his bodyguards or his physical trainer, like never with teammates or anything. It's just like him and his bodyguards.
Well, and because I feel like as he's kind of said that at this point in his career, it almost seemed like he was really alienating himself in the fact that he was just a man on a mission and it was to win this 6th title. And that's just kind of how I get the sense that outside of basketball, he really alienated himself. Like he talked about, he was always just in his room doing his own thing. But I guess it's at the same time not that different considering when we saw him in his rookie season, like he said that he did the same thing. He was very much to himself. He didn't really go out with teammates. He didn't go partake in their adventures, So, I mean, I guess it in a sense does kind of stay true to who he is. And he kept his circle tight and close. That's for sure. But Jess, tell me what you would think if 5 people showed up to deliver you a pizza at your house. Like, let's
I
be
was
honest.
expecting like some story that I had never heard of. I thought they were going to be like, oh, and they jumped him or something, you know, like they robbed him. I don't know. I was expecting some crazy story out of it.
Right. Isn't that the first part of like 90% of porno movies is 5 guys show up to deliver a pizza?
Or that. To me, what did they put in his food to purposely poison him? That's what I was instantly wondering, because I'm like, okay, well, you've seen people like spit in other people's food when they're pissed. That makes sense, I guess. But like, what the heck did they go and get that would poison MJ to this extent to where he was struggling to even make it out there, and he struggled in like the first half of the game, I want to say. And what did they possibly give him? That is all I'm trying to figure out.
I will say that I also saw on Twitter that someone posted I guess, backing up of this theory, and the fact that in 2002, Kobe Bryant also played in Denver. I cannot remember for the life of me at the moment if it was pizza that he ordered, but he definitely ordered some type of food, and he also had food poisoning the next day. So now it's just like, okay, who are these people? Who are these Utah Jazz fans that are just out here poisoning stars for them to get what they need?
Well, you remember in Denver also, Kobe had a very tumultuous relationship with that city because that's where the rape charges were too. So they always, I mean, that was like the hardest place for him to play. I saw not a conspiracy there. Apparently this is true from the director of The Last Dance said that the reason nobody else got sick from the pizza is because Michael Jordan spit on the pizza, which was something that he would do pretty regularly, I guess, if he didn't want anybody else to eat his food. So the trainer and his security guards, I guess, ate without talking to him before, and he's pissed about it. So he said, this pizza is just for me, and he spat all over the pizza. And I guess that wasn't uncommon for him because he had somebody, this is coming from the director, he had somebody in his posse that would bake fresh cinnamon rolls for him at the United Center every time, and he would spit on them every time so nobody would take them from him.
Oh my, that is the most dramatic thing.
Yeah, because I'm going to be honest here. I really feel like if he just wanted them all to himself, kind of don't think that many people would challenge that.
No.
Did you not know that kid as like when you were in like elementary school who would like lick the stuff that they wanted so you couldn't have it?
I hate those people though, when you're eating your snack and they're like, can I have some? And you just feel obligated to say yes. So MJ, I respect you for that, but also spitting on all of your food, that is a step too far.
Yeah, that's definitely weird. I'm for sure not gonna lie. Like, yeah, that's just weird. And I mean, the rest is obviously history. We know that MJ went on to still prove that he's the best player in the world, despite feeling like total incomplete SHIT. But from there,
he looked terrible too. Like going back and looking at like how he was sweating so much. It was crazy going back and like looking at that. Like he looked like he was on the verge of death.
Yep. Yeah. It was interesting for me to see because I've always heard about this flu game, but I've never actually seen like what transpired that night. And that for me was pretty incredible to witness. I will say though that another funny thing, like pretty much seeing everyone's reactions last night, that someone was like, I'm still going to call this the flu game because food poisoning game just doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
Good point.
Do either of you buy the conspiracy theory about the hangover, or do you think that it's exactly like you said? You do.
I do believe that. I think that it's because what makes me believe it is I know you say like, oh, he's a competitor. Yes, yes, yes. But if he's playing poker, he's also being competitive. He's probably also letting that get out of hand. He's also probably drinking more while he's playing poker. And I think it could have just been a situation that he ultimately just let loose and had one too many, and he just ended up being hungover. Because how old was he at this time? I can't do math at the moment.
36,
but he was
37.
And let's think about, we were just talking, fun fact, everyone, it's Jet's birthday, so make sure you give him a shout out there. But we're talking about it, as you get older, your hangovers are significantly worse. So it could have been a situation that he had not drank this much in a while. Like,
Not if you're the GOAT.
But in Utah, things are different. And were they not different at the time? But I'm pretty sure gambling is different, and like you can't buy alcohol at certain times.
So the story goes. So Dennis Rodman, this is a fact. In between games, chartered a private plane from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas. Not a very long flight. So the story isn't that he was playing poker in his hotel room or drinking it, that he went to Vegas. But yeah, it is. They don't serve alcohol in a lot of places.
I don't see that happening. I personally do not buy it.
I believe it. I believe it if he went somewhere kind of exclusive, private in Salt Lake City. But knowing how years back, how much the Atlanta City thing blew up, I mean, I just can't imagine that, because this was still 97. Like, media was even more prevalent then. So I find it hard to believe that if he would have gone with Rodman to Vegas and been out partying, that no one, like the most popular human on the planet, would have been caught.
Right. And the fact that like he couldn't leave his hotel rooms because everyone would follow him. Like he would not have been able to go anywhere without them spotting him, especially at this point in his career. He was very well known. He was huge. Media was growing. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's why that other theory that I said at the beginning about him being at Robert Redford, I guess, had like a mountain house because skiing.
See, that's the one that I would believe.
I still don't believe
like
it.
A classy mountain party, he's getting just like so trashed that
sloshed.
Yes, especially if he's with a group of people that he's comfortable with and he's taking their money. Like, his confidence is just going to keep growing if he's taking their money, if they're playing poker, he's having drinks, he's with people. Again, he's with people he's comfortable with. So that means he's going to be more relaxed, be more inclined to drink. I think it just makes sense.
Yeah, if you're right, if it was one of those things, it would have had to have been that. There's no way he could have gone to Vegas without somebody.
Pretty much, if you give me A, B, C, or D, which one are you going to believe? That he went to Vegas to drink, was hungover, he went to a mountain party where he played poker and drank with his friends, or 5 guys showed up to deliver him a pizza to his hotel room that he ate by himself and got food poisoning on? Honestly, the last option is going to be the last one, I'd believe.
Maybe that was just the realization that he was lactose intolerant.
Ding, ding, ding. Jess has figured it out. The goat does not eat cheese.
That's gotta be it.
But all right, guys. So the other key part about this episode was the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals, Bulls versus Pacers, in which the episode actually opened to Reggie Miller openly talking about Michael and the fact that I give him props, because I will say that of everyone we've seen in this whole series, Reggie Miller's the one that truly, I believe, was not afraid of MJ, like at all. And I will say that the other thing that cracked me up is the next reference that we've had to MJ being God, and that he literally referred to Michael Jordan as Black Jesus. I think that is phenomenal, because I've heard LeBron be called that, to be honest, but the fact that that was like just a part of his active vocabulary, along with the Black Cat or Jordan, like that's just hilarious to me, that you have this opponent that you don't fear, yet you call him Black Jesus. Jet, did you know that he referred to him as Black Jesus during their playing days?
I've heard people refer to him as Black Jesus, but I didn't know Reggie Miller referred to him. And also apparently Michael Jordan referred to himself as Black Jesus.
Yeah.
Which doesn't surprise me at all. No, I do think that it was unique for Reggie Miller to be one of the few players that wasn't scared of him. That was also a very, very good player. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. A lot of the other guys, I mean, like BJ Armstrong went at him like, okay, BJ Armstrong is like, a fringe NBA player at times. Other guys who made his list, some of them were just like scrubs that just pissed him off for some reason. But like Reggie Miller was legitimately really good player. And they said that was the hardest. What did he say in the locker room after they won Game 7? Like, that's the hardest we worked in 13 years. Yeah. So like they gave him a challenge, and that was a really good Pacers team. And the next year they went to the NBA Finals, if I'm recalling correctly. So it was a really, really interesting matchup to see this team that could push the Bulls as far as they could go. The Bulls, remember, had been to 2 finals before that, and they were gassed. I mean, they played like the equivalent of another like half season on top of what they had. So
didn't he say something like, and he still believed that they were the better team.
Reggie Miller said
Like
that.
still
Yeah.
to this day.
Yep. He's like, I think he said that we had more championship talent, but actually that was one of my favorite quotes that he brought up, was basically saying, I think it was Reggie Miller, but it might've been in the next episode. I don't know. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but what really stuck out to me was him saying the fact that championship, like, experience and championship DNA help a team go a lot farther than having none. And that's basically what happened to them and what made their team, even though they're the better team, lose.
It matters so much feeling confident in crunch time situations and being poised and not letting the moment rattle you. I mean, that really makes a difference. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you've never been there before, you're going to be nervous. I mean, that's a big stage. And
I mean,
the Bulls have been there time and time again. And you don't want to say the Pacers choked, but the Bulls knew what to do, and they knew, okay, there's this much time left. We can come back from this. We're not going to do anything different than what we usually do. I think the Pacers, to a degree, panicked.
I think
it's the same. Oh, go ahead, Haley.
Yeah, well, you got it.
I was just gonna say it's the same for really any sport, any position, any job that you have. The person with more experience, the veteran, is always going to be much more comfortable than the rookie. Unless you're Michael Jordan, then you're going to be confident no matter what. But I think that's all it really came down to, is they had all of these vets that knew what they were doing, that have been there before, whereas it wasn't necessarily the same for the Pacers, you know?
I think as the most recent example, unfortunately, was the Super Bowl 2 years ago with the Rams and the Patriots. I am slightly biased, in the fact that I'm a Rams fan.
Right there
but
with you.
I do say that year,
for other fan bases, you guys don't even know
I will
what you're
say missing. that year the Rams had a more talented team and the team to dethrone the Patriots, but they lacked that championship experience, and that is ultimately was their demise. They shot themselves in the foot that game.
It's like what we've seen with the Bulls is the same thing that happens with the Patriots. It's that it's like the boogeyman is on the other side. Like, this team is there constantly.
It's just
like,
this
dun, dun,
dun.
They're not going to screw up. They know what they're doing. They have been here. Tom Brady has been here a million times. Michael Jordan's been there a million times. Like, so you're walking on eggshells, almost like, I can't screw up because I know they're not going to.
And there's a part of them that feels like they don't belong in a way. So they're like trying to prove themselves, whereas the entire rest of the team knows that they belong. And if they don't know that themselves belong, well, they know that MJ belongs and he'll get them there, you know?
I think there's like a degree of like you looking at when the Pacers are playing them, or the Jazz or the Sonics or any of the Knicks who they played, especially later in Jordan's career, you're looking at across the court and saying, holy shit, this is the greatest player who's ever played, and I'm playing against him right now. The same could be said about Tom Brady. You're like, oh my God, this guy's literally a living legend. I'm playing on the same field as him right now. Same with Belichick as a coach, Phil Jackson as a coach. And like, that's intimidating. Even if you are at the top of your game and as a professional athlete, a lot of these people grew up idolizing them. Remember, Michael Jordan, he won an MVP that year. He's still at the end of his career. He's still the best player in basketball. And you're like, well, how do I compete with this? I looked up to this guy when he was 10 years younger, and he was still the best player then. It's sort of wild. Tom Brady and Michael Jordan have a lot of similarities. I know.
I've seen a lot of conversations going around since then of people debating which athlete in present day, and even going back a couple years, is the most comparable to what the 90s witnessed with Michael Jordan, what we can compare that to now. And the two that I keep seeing is Tom Brady and Tiger Woods are the two that everyone kind of keeps bringing up right now.
It's about the longevity. It's about the consistent winning and consistently being there. And when you're there in the finals or the Super Bowl or the Masters, pulling it out. And Brady's been able to do that time and time again. Tiger Woods did it for time and time again. Now he's making sort of this second life comeback. And Jordan obviously did when he went to the postseason. One of those, the numbers they put up on that ESPN trivia we talked about, that they give you half a second to answer.
I gave up on reading.
They eliminated like 60 Hall of Famers. It says like just Jordan did, like ridiculous. Just like people will say, well, he played against kind of a weaker team in the East. Like, he played what his competition was, and they
Yeah.
were just better than everybody else. It makes, when you beat everybody, it makes other teams look worse than they actually are. Like those Knicks teams were great teams. That Pacers team was a good team, really good team. Those Jazz teams had 2 first ballot lock Hall of Famers in Stockton and Malone, and just every challenger that they faced, the Bulls took down. So I think that it's a great point about that mentality you have looking across the field or the court from somebody who's been so successful. It's a very, very hard thing to overcome.
What's so funny is it even comes down to MJ's teammates, Scottie Pippen's like, I just get out of his way and let MJ go. And there's moments where these guys are incredible players. They're some of the best players who have ever played. And the way they talk about MJ is like, I'm going to just get out of his way. He's the best player to ever live. Like, typically, when you hear really great players talking about themselves, you hear them speaking so highly of themselves, but they know that they can't really be compared to MJ. So they just back off. It's wild.
Well, it's even like in having Rodman talk about Game 6 of the 1998 finals when MJ, he was just like spitting out cuss words left and right. So I can't say it verbatim, but basically essentially saying he was like, hell nah, he's taking this blipping shot. And it was just so funny to me because he was like just going through exactly what you knew MJ and all of them were thinking. Like he was saying everyone's thoughts in this moment. And it was just ultimately that there was no way in hell MJ was not going to take that final shot. And that's the beauty of it. And I think one thing that is a huge takeaway and just kind of adding on to, I think, what Tom Brady does, what we've seen Tiger Woods do, and even I would say what we also witnessed with Kobe Bryant is that all of those athletes, the one thing that they all have in common, aside from their just mentality and their ferocity and their competitiveness, is the fact that they brought it up in these 2 episodes, is their ability to stay present. They don't think too far ahead. They don't let the past linger. They literally are present. I thought it was fascinating. They were talking about how Jordan thinks like, well, why wouldn't I take this shot? Or why would I think about taking a shot I might miss? And just the fact that failure almost doesn't even cross his mind as an option just really showed his strength and his ultimate I was just blown away by the fact that we learned even more about the way that his mind was constructed and the fact that he was just so present. Every action didn't look too far ahead or too far behind. He was just in the moment. And I think that's what these other great athletes do as well.
Yeah. It was really cool to see when the media was all questioning MJ and the first thing he said was, let me enjoy this one, man. Like something about wanting to live in the moment. That part really stuck out to me as well. I think it is amazing to hear that because especially living in the moment that we live in now, where so many people don't live in the moment, the first thing they do when they get their ring is post it on social media rather than, enjoying the moment. So I really the moment as well.
I also slightly think that he was avoiding any questions about a return, that was just his deflect, but definitely. I did like it as well. What were you going to say, Jet?
I was going to say that I think with Jordan and winning specifically that last title, that he was obviously in the back of his head thinking he knew Phil Jackson was gone. And I think that he wanted to enjoy that because even though he talks about later in the episode, I would have come back and stuff like that, I think they all knew it's over. So it meant even more to him too. And I also think, as crazy as it sounds, and that he was, he just won a title and he just hit the game-winning shot, I think that he was really excited that he hit it over the guy that told him he could go defend him 4 years ago. It was like, I can, I think that's how his brain worked. This guy said something bad about me 4 years ago, and then he just tortured him. Hit 2 game-winning shots over him in 2 seasons in the NBA Finals. I also want to say that mindfulness thing that you were both talking about, I think other great athletes recognize it too. When Reggie Miller hit the game-winning shot in the Pacers series, and there was still 0.6 seconds left, everybody in the Pacers was celebrating.
Oh my gosh,
one guy
Larry
who wasn't,
Bird.
Larry Bird wasn't, because he knows that if you're great, you never think you're going to miss the shot. So Larry Bird, as a former 3-time MVP, 3-time NBA champion, was there's nothing to celebrate. This guy, I guarantee you, this guy thinks he's going to hit this shot, and he has enough time to get it off. That would have been Larry Bird's mindset.
That was honestly one of the more powerful shots, I think, in these 2 episodes was Larry Bird. I mean, in present day, he would have been blown up as a meme, but it just said so much about Jordan in one single shot. And the fact that he was Reggie Miller's coach and he didn't think that it was over because he knew who was on the other end, on the other bench. And it was just.
And how close was that shot to going?
I know.
Like, the shot went in. Like, there is no denying it went in. It just bounced out.
It was like this close to being Kawhi Leonard's shot from last year.
Yes.
But bounced in.
Yes, exactly. And so the other thing I want to talk about, guys, because we know episode 10, they finished it up. They wrapped things up for us. Talked a lot about what happened after this season was over. But the guy that I still want to talk about is Gus and Michael Jordan's relationship with this security guard, his head of security, that ended up becoming very much of a father figure for him. I thought that this story being put in this second to last episode was really beautiful. And it just also connected the fact that I think a couple episodes back, I talked about, I love how MJ stayed so grounded. And again, like we've been saying, so present, and he treated the people around him with respect. He was always humble, and he didn't care who you were, what you did, or what your life path looked like. He was going to respect you. And I think we really saw that, especially with his group of security guards.
Yeah, I loved seeing the relationship that he had with the security guards, especially with Gus. It came at a perfect time, and we've seen it with the security guards over the past couple of episodes, but he didn't really dive into why he was so close with them. So finally seeing how he was there, how MJ was there for Gus, just in the same way that Gus was always there for MJ, whether it was MJ calling him crying his eyes out and Gus running over, or Gus going through chemo and MJ being there for every part of it. I loved that. I think everybody needs someone like that. You know, most of the time it does end up being your parent or significant other. And I just think he was so blessed to be able to have had not just his father and his mother, but he ended up having someone else on top of that.
Yeah, I thought it was really special that we saw how much he struggled with the loss of his father, and the fact that he was able to essentially gain another father through the Bulls organization. I just thought that it was really cool and unique. And I actually also saw on Twitter, I don't know why they would have left this out, I guess just family issues, but I also read that he actually paid for all of Gus's medical expenses as well.
Wow. That's hard.
Yeah, I think that you saw over the course of the series how important Michael Jordan's father was to him. And I think he's always was looking for a father figure. And when his dad passed away or was murdered, that more aptly, he felt a hole. And fortunately, he had this guy who was around the same age, it looked like, as his father, and sort of was able to fill that father figure. I think it's like a grounding role, right? It's almost like someone who's just like, okay, I'm not going to just like feed into your ego and say, yes, you're the greatest. Yes, you're the greatest. Like someone who's a real, authentic person who, I mean, he was a cop in Chicago for years. Like, I mean, that is as real of a job as it gets. Like you see some shit being a cop in Chicago. So I don't think anything that Jordan did or would have done would have fazed him. And I think that the way Jordan grew up with his dad pushing him to play sports and pushing him to constantly be better, Jordan always felt a need for somebody to fill that sort of role. And when he lost his father, he had somebody who was able to step up and fill that, even if it was just like in his head being like, if everything goes wrong and I lose everything, I'll still have this guy because he loves me for who I am. It doesn't matter about the fame, doesn't matter about how great I am at basketball. I feel like this guy loves the real Michael Jordan. And I think that was important for him, because otherwise you could see, I mean, with some people, with celebrities, like it spins out of control. If all you hear is yes, and everybody just feeds into your ego. So as much as Michael Jordan had vices, and he admitted over the course of this, like he had vices, a competition. He said he had a competition problem. He said he clearly drinks, he smokes cigars, he gambles, but we've never heard of Michael Jordan hitting somebody with his car or being caught with a prostitute or, beating a girlfriend or his wife or anything like that, because I think he has been cognizant enough and was raised well enough to say, I need to make sure I have people around me that will keep me sane and grounded, that aren't just going to do everything I ask them for and agree with everything I say.
Right.
No.
One other thing that I really liked about their relationship is that with Jordan, we always see him being so tough, so strong, so powerful. He's always there. I shouldn't say always, but most of the time when people ask him for an autograph or photo, he does take the time to do it. He takes the time for people who have, their Make-A-Wish wanting to meet MJ. He always makes the time for really anyone he can. He's obviously got a very long list, but he also, we've seen in this docuseries that he has his soft side and he sometimes needs to break down. So for him, that was obviously very important, is having someone that he could have that soft side with. And I just think Gus was really the greatest character for that. He just helped him in a lot of ways, and you could really see that softer side of him through here.
Yeah, I definitely think that he was just the person that he was able to have vulnerable moments with.
Right.
And just like we saw, his father was with the first three-peat, always in those pictures, that this was a person to kind of serve, like you said, Jess, serve that role.
Mm-hmm.
From here on out.
Do you think it's weird that he didn't have that with any of his teammates, even like a brotherly connection?
I don't think so, because people look for it in different ways, and you'll notice with a lot of people that they search for it in ways that maybe they're comfortable, maybe they grew up with a parent that they were super close with, so then they look for that later on, or maybe they grew up without a parent that they weren't close with either of their parents, so then they kind of search for that their whole life. Everyone reacts to things differently, and for him that was just the thing. He was always like, even when he was the rookie, he was always the best on the team. And so he needed someone who was older, who had more experience.
Yeah. But it was also his best, it kept showing his best friend and bodyguard, the other guy, I'm forgetting his name. He wasn't a basketball player. So it seemed like his relationship with the guys on the team was just professional.
Right.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think Michael literally viewed this as his profession, where he could be competitive and where he wanted to be the best. And I think anything else was just simply going to get in the way, because once he ultimately is vulnerable with his teammates, then that could change up things on the court, and I think slightly Michael being so much of a superior player, and especially how much better he thought in his own mind he was, I almost think that it made him not want to be close to these other guys because there was no need to be. It was he didn't have to suck up to anyone. He didn't have to have these relationships with people. He was the ringleader. They all needed to try and be close to him. They all needed to prove to him their worthiness. Michael never had to do that for anyone else. There was no need for him to have that intimacy with his teammates.
But at the same time, everybody has work friends. I think it's a little unusual that he wasn't have one guy. I mean, he played with Scottie Pippen for over a decade. That he's they talk about each other as players, greatest teammate I ever had, but it doesn't seem like they're friends, or that. I kind of wanted to see a reunion at the end of this. Does he ever interact with any of these guys ever? Does he ever get on the phone with Scottie Pippen and be like, hey, Scottie, remember that when we did this thing or that thing? I get not being on the phone with Dennis Rodman because he's a crazy person, but I mean, he had a relationship with guys for years and years and years, and if I were to guess, I don't think he talks to any of them.
Yeah,
which I think is very, very weird.
I will say that you bringing up a great point, and this is kind of going to be our last one because we are running out of time, but I think that it is interesting that there must have been intentions behind the fact that every single one of these interviews was done individually. Because I think there could have been some times that it would have been fun to see Scottie Pippen and MJ in the same room recounting these events together. Whether it was when Rodman left, or even when, Pippen got hurt in this series, just to have them reminisce on that together, I think would have been really special. So you definitely do bring up a very valid point that I agree with you, though. I don't think that he had a close relationship with any of his teammates. It was strictly, you are here to help me win a championship.
I think more than anything, like you guys were saying, he just viewed it as business and he wasn't there to make friends.
Yeah.
But that being said, we could still go back to the moment where Kobe talks about how he was his mentor and how MJ did help him in so many ways. So I think he just he was prepared for the next generation, but when it was his turn, he wanted it all to be focused on him. He didn't need friends. That's not what he was there for. He had his own friends outside of it.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to mix business with pleasure.
Yeah. No, I agree. And what were you going to say, Jet? Last thought here.
I was just going to say, like, it's still to me, like, for someone who is so passionate about basketball, and you saw, like, that one time he cried in the show was when he was talking about how passionate he was about basketball, and he asked for a stop, for a pause. To someone who loves basketball that much, to only look at it as, like, this is my job, you're here to help me get there. And, like, I know he valued winning above everything else, but to, like, not find some common ground with those people, like, you had to assume, like, Scottie Pippen also probably loves basketball more than anything else in his life. I'm sure Steve Kerr, who's since he's retired, has worked as a general manager and a coach and an assistant coach, has been involved, like, loves basketball more than anything else. Like, have outside interests, but Jordan clearly valued that above everything else. And you would think, okay, if there's anybody who's going to be a like-minded person, it would be somebody who went through the same stuff that he did in his life, playing for that Bulls team. But to me, it just doesn't seem like he connected with any of those guys on anything other than a pure basketball level.
But the one thing I will disagree with is I don't think any of them went through what he went through. And I don't think that he has ever been able to verbalize exactly what his experience was like until these documentaries really came out, truthfully. But with that, Jess, you got our GOAT quote for us for this evening?
I do. All right. I want to finish off on this GOAT quote right here. It says, "There's no such thing as a perfect basketball player, and I don't believe there is only one greatest player either." I wanted to share this one because the second the docuseries finished, ESPN started talking about, and we'll discuss who really is the GOAT. Is it MJ or is it LeBron? And it's like, that's unnecessary. We don't have to talk about that right now, especially. Yeah. And he's right. There can be multiple. Either way, I think after watching this docuseries, it allowed everyone, people who already knew his story, people who didn't know his story, we can all come to agreement that he is the GOAT. Whether or not he is specifically your GOAT, he really is the GOAT.
Yes, I will have to agree that I've been completely swayed, as if I didn't have a bone in this fight to begin with, but I have been swayed that I now understand through living through LeBron James. I now have a greater appreciation for Michael Jordan and what he really did. And that to me puts him above LeBron. So that's my consensus. Jet, what is our news and gossip?
You will see a LeBron documentary like this in 10 years, guaranteed.
For
He's
sure.
already working
Definitely.
on it. 100% is working on it already. Here's from Darren Rovell, who works for ESPN. He does a lot of their business stuff. Dennis Rodman skipped the media session day before Game 4 of the '98 Finals and was fined $20,000 when he took that trip to wrestle instead of going to practice. He was paid $250,000 plus the use of a private jet to appear at that one WCW show. When he returned, his teammate Ron Harper said, "I think that just makes him a good businessman." So Tobias Harris of the Philadelphia 76ers said, "I need 10 more episodes dedicated only to Dennis Rodman."
Yes.
I think a lot of people have felt that way. We have, like you said, Cassidy Hubbard wrote, "A food poisoning game just doesn't have the same ring to it. Flu game will stay as the name." Another tweet from Darren Rovell: "Before game used Air Jordan 1s sold today for $560,000. The highest price ever paid for a pair of used Air Jordans was the Flu Game shoes, which were bought for $104,000 in 2013. And they were initially given to a ball boy of the Utah Jazz. He sold them recently for a cool $1 million."
Oh my! Did you see the tweet from Myles Garrett? Either of you?
What do you say?
Which one?
It was the one where Dennis, so it was a gif of Dennis Rodman smacking Karl Malone on the butt. And he was like, "I bet OBJ thought this is how the security guard was going to react after the LSU national.
Did you see
national-
OBJ's response?
No, did he have a response?
OBJ clapped back and said, he was like, yeah, still a little confused how I got charged for assault with this and you didn't this season.
I like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's some spice.
I
There's
think
some spice.
Miles Garrett probably shouldn't tweet anymore. I got one more. This is from Jessica Samenta of Sports Illustrated. Everyone's asking why Michael Jordan would order a pizza late night when 5 Sketchy Delivery guys showed up to his room. The dude loved to gamble.
Fair. And I will say the other fun thing that I saw on social was that the blonde Pacers fan that was screaming,
Yeah.
they
Oh, yeah.
several times, someone in Indiana, their Wish TV in Indiana actually found who this person is. Her and her husband have had season tickets behind the bench for 44 years. She said that she has had a ton of interactions with MJ, who would constantly just shake his head and laugh at her. But she said almost every time they played the Bulls, her and Dennis Rodman would get into it. There would even be times that he wasn't even paying attention to the huddle because he was just shouting at her in the stands. So she has a very active role in this rivalry. And I thought it was funny that someone went out and found her. She said that she had had so many text messages, even from a friend from New Zealand, letting her know that she was going viral.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. I literally saw that right before we hopped on.
She's my spirit animal. I'm like that at every Celtics game.
Right. There we go. I think everyone has that in us. But guys, with that, this was our last dance, as well as we are here to wrap up on The Last Dance by the ESPN's docuseries over Michael Jordan. Thank you so much for watching with us. We really appreciate it. I had so much fun on this one. And if you've just been listening and you haven't gotten a chance to watch the series, make sure you go and do that, because I promise there's something in this series for everyone. So with that, I'm your host, Haley Graves. You can find me on all socials on Instagram at Haley Graves with 2 S's. That's HALEYGRAVESS. And on Twitter, Haley1Graves2. And any Lost fans out there, I'll be doing an after show covering Lost's final season this Thursday night. So see you back then. Jess, where can people find you?
You all can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Overtime Jess and Twitter at Jess Lucero Live.
All right. And Jet, it has been so wonderful getting to know you, hearing all of your experiences as an